Hello and welcome to Pitloon Garage. In this video I'll give detailed instructions on how to add GPS tracking to any vehicle while maintaining full control of your location data. Here's what you'll have achieved by the end of this guide. You will have an app on your phone that shows the location of your vehicle, automated push notifications when any of your configured events occur, such as your car starting, a server that you control that is running open source tracking software which you can invite all your friends to use. This guide will be broken into the following sections. 1. How this compares to other solutions. 2. Basic details about tracking device selection. 3. How to set up a tracking server. 4. How to connect your tracking device to your server. And finally, how to install a tracking device into your vehicle. Setting up a tracking server might sound scary, but I promise that anyone can achieve this, and my instructions will be as beginner-friendly as possible. Okay, let's talk about how this compares to other solutions. So you can buy a tracker off Amazon for under $100 and that'll work just fine, but it'll be sending your data to a server that's likely hosted in China and it'll be a crappy UI and not the best experience for you. Another option is to pay a company that offers a tracking solution for their services, and they'll give you a tracking device and some website or app for you to view your vehicle's location, but it's going to cost you a monthly subscription fee. So it's a pretty good and safe option if you want to have a hands-off approach, but I don't think it gives you as much control as the solution I'm going to offer you today does. So today we're going to be using a program called Traccar, and I mentioned it is open source. And open source just means you can actually view the source code that makes up that program. That's important because it means you know nothing sneaky is happening behind the scenes. All right, let's talk about the device we're choosing. The device I've chosen is a Teltonika FMC 920. This cost me 150 Australian dollars. I chose it because it's manufactured in Lithuania, which is in the European Union, and in the EU they have this law called the GDPR, which is responsible for some of the strictest data privacy regulations in the world. And therefore, I can be pretty sure that nothing sneaky is happening on this device. For the purposes of this video though, you don't need to have this exact one. You can use anything that is listed on the Traccar compatible devices, which is a pretty extensive list. Also, make sure that your device has 4G capabilities. So these next few steps might sound daunting, and we're going to end up using something called the terminal, which is what you see hackers use in the movies. Now, if anything doesn't work the way you expected, trace back and make sure you've completed each step. The instructions could be out of date, especially if you watch this video a long time after I make it. So hopefully I've included up-to-date instructions in the description below. So we're going to create our own virtual private server, or VPS for short. And all this means is we're just allocating part of someone else's computer to ourselves on the internet to do with what we like. In this case, we're going to be installing Traccar. You can use any VPS provider, but the instructions I'm providing today are specifically for Amazon Web Services, or AWS. They have a service called Lightsail, and that is their VPS service. It currently costs $3.50 a month for their cheapest tier, which is what we're going to use. Assuming you now have your tracking device, let's set up our tracking server before we install the device into our car. That way we can ensure that everything is working as expected before we put effort into installation. So for this, you're going to need your tracking device with a working SIM and a way to power your tracking device before it gets installed into your car. If it comes with a big battery, then great. Mine has a really small one, so I had to connect it to a 12-volt supply to test it out here. A computer, a Traccar.org account. This is required for push notifications. The link to sign up to that is in the description. And an Amazon Web Services account. So signing up to this requires credit card and a mobile number. So just be aware that that's part of the Amazon sign up process. Okay, so we're going to need 3 tabs open to get this done. The first one is the Traccar VPS guide, and that's a guide that I've written up that has all of the instructions that I'm about to go through. The second thing we need is the Traccar.org website, and ideally be logged into your own account. And finally, we need the AWS Management Console, or Amazon Web Services. Let's get started. So from the Amazon console, we are going to type in Lightsail in the top left, and that will bring you to the Lightsail service. Then we're going to click Create Instance, leave the default platform as Linux, and then for the blueprint, choose OS only and Amazon Linux 2. Leave the instance plan as the default cost because that's the cheapest one. And finally, we can rename the instance to something like Traccar server, but this can be whatever you want. Okay, so the instance will now appear on our Lightsail homepage. It'll take about a minute for it to boot up. While that's happening, let's take a look at the guide. So you can see there's a lot of info here, maybe even more info that I describe here. So let's make sure to read through it if you get stuck. And most importantly, we've got all of the commands that we're going to enter in to our server to make sure that Traccar is set up properly. Okay, so we'll give it a second and hopefully that server will come to life. I might give the page a refresh just to see if it's actually done. There it is. Okay, so now we want to connect to our server, and the way we're going to do that is there's a couple of options. You can actually click this orange button here. You can click here and go connect, or you can click on the name, which will bring you to the page for this server itself, and hit the connect using SSH. So we're going to just go back to the home screen and then hit this orange button. And this is called a terminal. So this is actually a connection that is live on your server. And let's get started with the commands. So important thing to note is anything with a hash at the start is actually a comment, and that's just describing what action we're taking. So this first one is enabling Postgres, which is our database engine. Then we are going to install Postgres. And we have to type Y for yes, and then enter. Cool. Now we can run the Postgres or the database setup. And finally, we will start our database engine. All right. And as a bit of config, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the system to run Postgres whenever it boots. Okay, so now we need to change to be the Postgres user because we're going to do some stuff in the database. And to do that, we need to set a password first for the Postgres user. So now we have to enter in a password. Don't worry that you can't see what's being typed. Cool, that password's set. Next, we are going to change to become that user. Make sure to enter that password that you just typed in. And finally, we are going to open a Postgres console so we can enter commands directly into the database. Beautiful. All right, so the next thing to do is set another password. This one is for actually the Postgres database user, slightly different to the Linux user. And this is an important password to remember. So copy that command, paste it in, delete the your password here, and type in a memorable password. I'm not actually going to use this server, so don't try and hack me. I know these are a bit silly passwords that I'm entering now. And the last command in the database is to create the Traccar database, and this is where all of your location data will actually be stored. Finally, we can exit the Postgres terminal. And now we're going to do the kind of scary thing, which is we're going to open up a text file in something called Vim, and Vim is a text editor that works in the terminal. The key things here are you're either going to be in command or insert mode when you have a file open. You can only make changes to the file when in insert mode, as in if you wanted to type something in. To go into insert mode, you have to press I, and to return to command mode, you have to press escape. And when you open the file, it'll start in command mode. So let's open that up. Cool. Now you can't use your mouse to scroll and move around and click on things here. So to actually navigate, you're going to have to use your arrow keys. So let's hit the down arrow until we get past all of these comments. You can see the commented lines have the hash at the start. And we're going to get down to this host section. Now let's move across to the word that says ident. What we're going to do is we're going to change this to password because the way our Traccar server connects to our database is using a username and password. So now that we're here, we can't just type. We're going to have to hit I to enter insert mode. You can see insert appears down the bottom of the terminal. And then we're going to delete ident, type password, and then hit escape to re-enter command mode. Now to save and close this file, what we need to do is we need to type, while in command mode, :WQ, and W is for write, so we're saving, and Q is to quit. Beautiful. And you can see in the guide, I've got an example of what that line should look like. Now we're going to return to be the default Linux user. And you can see that input has changed. And finally, we're going to restart Postgres so all of those changes apply. Beautiful. Now we're going to install the Traccar server. So much like you would do on a normal computer, you need to download the installation file or the zip file. This shouldn't take too long because the internet connection on your server should be schmick. And again, much like when you install something on your regular computer, you'll probably have to unzip the file that you just downloaded. So we'll do that. And let's run that installer file. Cool, and that is done. Now we're going to enter Vim one more time. This time we're going to be editing the Traccar config. So paste that in. And you can see here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to replace all of these entry lines with this section of code that you can copy and paste. So if you read this comment here, you'll notice that I say you can delete lines by pressing DD when you've got the cursor on that line when in command mode. Once all the entry lines have been deleted, press I to enter insert mode, and then you can paste this in with right click and paste. So let's do that. You can see we're in command mode and we can see the cursor is on the entry line. So I'll go DD, DD, where's my cursor? There it is, DD, DD. Cool, hit I to enter insert mode, right click, paste. Beautiful. Now we're going to have to change some of the values here. You can see I've got your password here as one of the options. So let's change that first. We are in insert mode, so we can delete. And your notification key. So where does that come from? This is why we have the Traccar account open. If you click on the little user account symbol, you will then be brought to your account page, which has your push notification API key. This is essential so push notifications can work. So we're going to copy that, go back here, delete that, and then paste. Beautiful. Now to save this, we just hit escape, then type :WQ, and that is saved. All right, and that is the last step. We just we start the Traccar service. And we're done. Now we can actually just close this terminal. That's the last thing we need to do there. And we are about to access our server for the first time in the browser. Now, there's one last thing we need to do before we can access the server, and that is we need to open up a port. And that is because Traccar is accessible on port 8082. So you have the URL, then :8082. So we need to allow connections on that port. So if we, from the homepage, click on our server, click on networking, then scroll down to IPv4 firewall and then add rule, leave it as custom TCP and type in 8082 and then create, and that's done. So now we can get our IP address. Now, how do you get your IP address? It's accessible in a couple of places. On the connect page, you can see it's got connect to right there. And on the home page, it's just listed there on the tile. So let's open up a new tab and we'll paste that and then do :8082. And if everything's worked, we should see this screen. So this is fantastic. If you see this, it means everything has been done correctly. And the default login is admin as the username and admin as the password. The very first thing you do once you've logged in is you should change that. You should go into the account section and change your name, email, and password. Keep in mind that this account that you are logged in as and you're changing is the admin account, so definitely don't delete it. You can manage users here. So if you wanted to invite your friends to use your server, you could create an account for them and they would be able to track their own vehicles, which is really cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have our tracking device send its location data to our tracking server. And the way we need to do that is by adding our server IP address and the port that it should communicate on to our tracking device. Now, this is where it's going to differ depending on what tracking device you have. So the instructions or the steps that I go through here might be slightly different to what you have to do for your tracker. Just look up the manual and figure out how to send these messages and you'll be fine. In this case, I'm going to be sending text message commands to my device to tell it what IP address and what port to send messages to. One other thing we have to do is we have to allow our server to receive messages on whatever port Traccar wants us to set up for that device. And it's going to be different depending on the device that you have. So if you go to the Traccar website again and click on the devices navigation, you will see all the devices that are supported by Traccar and all of the different ports that you could use for each device. And it's kind of smart what Traccar have done because each tracking device sends messages in a slightly different format, and Traccar needs to interpret that message and then display it in a consistent way on the app. And the way it does it is by saying, hey, if you have this device, you need to talk on this port. And that's how it knows what device and what kind of message is being received, just purely by what port the message is coming through on. So for ours, you can see that the port is 5027. Again, if you don't have this same device, it's going to be a different port. So you're going to have to search what kind of tracking device you have. So I'm going to copy that port. I'm going to go back to Lightsail. I'm going to click on our server, then networking, go down to the firewall section, add a rule, again, custom and TCP, and then paste our 5027 and go create. Now our server will be able to receive messages on port 5027, which is what I'm going to tell my tracker to send messages through. Okay, so let's send those messages to my device and tell it what IP address it should be sending the location data to and through what port. So I'm going to record my screen and you'll be able to see right now what I'm sending. I'm actually telling it to set a certain parameter to be the IP address and set another parameter to be the port. And with those two parameters set, that's all that really needs to be updated on the device itself for it to start sending. Again, your device might be slightly different. It might have the IP address and port in the same place, or like mine, it might be in two different parameters. You'll just have to figure it out based on the manual for that device. All right, this is the last piece of the puzzle in terms of server setup. So we just need to add our device now. And to do that, you can just click this plus button and you will see a name. I'm going to call it my car. And the identifier is actually the IMEI number of your tracking device. I'm not sure if there's an alternative to that, but in my experience, it's just that number. So it should be printed on the device itself. So get that and type it in here. So I've already copied and pasted mine. There it is. And now you can see your device. So hopefully, with everything configured, my device is now able to send messages. And once a message is received on this end, now that we know which device it's looking for, we'll hopefully go online. So I'm going to see if I can trigger that by just turning off my device's power. I've just got it off to the side here, which you can't see. And I know that when the power is disconnected on this device, it should send an event saying, hey, the power is off. So hopefully that'll come online shortly. Amazing, there it is. Look at that. So now we can see it's online, and I'm not gonna zoom in too far because I'll dox myself, but you can see I am Australian and I am from Melbourne. So yeah, that is the first or the main part of setting up your server. We're going to go through some more config stuff, mainly to set up the notifications and those kind of things. But I would take a moment right now. If you have got this far and you've achieved the same things I've shown here, then pat yourself on the back. This is a big achievement. Well done. Okay, onto the fun stuff. Now we're going to install the app on our phone so we can see our car at all times. What you need to do is open up the app or the Play Store, then search Traccar and choose the Traccar Manager. Then once you've installed it, the first time you open the app, it's going to ask you for the server address. And boy, do we have an IP address for them. So you want to enter in http:// so make sure you delete the S because that's on by default. Then enter our server IP. So for me, it's 54.252. .40.131 and finally colon 8082 at the end, and hit start. Then you probably do want to allow notifications if you want to get push notifications when events happen on your device. And here we are logged into our server on an app on our device. So I've been a bit naughty and I didn't actually update my details, so my login is still admin. And there we are. We now have vehicle tracking on our phone, which is so good. And we are one step away from push notifications, which is really, really cool. All right, let's add a push notification so you get alerted when your car starts. To do that, we're going to go to the settings section, then notifications, and then hit the plus button on the bottom right. Now, there's only two things you need here. You need the type, which is what we're notifying for, and then the channel, which is how we're sending out the notification. So you can actually enable SMS, email, those kind of things, but for this guide, we're just doing push notifications. So that push notification option is actually the Traccar channel. And the type is, you can see there's lots of different options for when you want to get notified. Now, you can't just pick any of these because your device needs to support this bit of information. Traccar's not going to notify if it doesn't know that that event is happening on your car. Now, ignition on is a pretty common one, so hopefully your device has that. So we're going to choose that. And right now, because the device isn't actually installed in the car, we can't really test it for real, but we can make sure the push notifications pathway is all set up by hitting test channels. And you should get a test notification to your phone, which confirms that's working just fine. Then we hit save. And there's one more step we have to do with this notification. It is not actually assigned to your car just yet. So we need to go to devices. You can see your car, go edit. And then in the connection section under notifications, choose your new notification you just created and hit save. Now you're all set up. Okay, we're about to install the tracking device into the car, but before we do so, there's one last set of changes that we want to make on this server, and that is if you go to settings and then server, you can actually change things like the speed unit, the default map that shows up, those kind of things, time zone. But what I do recommend you check is the registration is unticked. If it's ticked, it means that people can access your page and sign up and create their own account. You probably don't want that to start off with. And if you do want to create accounts for your friends, you can manually do so in the users section. So we're going to leave that turned off and save. Then on your own personal preferences, which is this top option, you can also change which maps appear and are available to be selected. So that's a nice one, just an aesthetic thing. Also the info that shows up on the vehicle. So you can see if I select this car, you can see I've got the address, speed, ignition, fixed time, and power. And that is actually configured in my settings, again, under the map section. And you can see this info is populated here. So you can choose whatever attributes you want to show up on your car on the map. Okay, so now we're going to connect our GPS tracker to our car. This is very device dependent. This one is hardwired, so we need to connect it directly into the wiring of the car. And yours might be one that connects via the OBD port. In that case, you just plug it in. Another option is just to have one that has a big battery and just charge it whenever you need to. So instead of hardwiring it by splicing into wires, what we're going to do is we're going to use these little fuse wire taps. So we've got two of them. One's going to be connected to our power source and one's going to be connected to our ignition source. And then we've got our ground wire that we also need to connect. This is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to connect into the fuse box. It's under the side of the car here, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've figured out which fuses are powered by the ignition and which ones are constantly under battery load. So you can see I've connected two of the fuse taps in, and that is it. Okay, time for a real world test. There we go, car's on. Well, there you have it, a feature-rich tracking solution for your car. And it'll take practically no time at all to add trackers to your other vehicles, get your friends involved. They can use your server too. There's one last thing I'd like you to do. Check out pitloon.com. It's a digital garage that I built for car enthusiasts, hopefully like yourself. You can add your cars, add mods, service history, check out other people's vehicles, that kind of stuff. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.